Hello, Pebble in your shoe listeners, and welcome to the program. Today I have a special guest, Michele Maize, a person that I've met like many others on the internet, and she is a fellow writer on medium.com. She has about 8,000 followers, and I'm editing with her on a couple publications and I got to know her, and I think that you guys will all really appreciate Michele's journey into sobriety as well as becoming a writer. And although she's not in the third chapter yet, she's getting there, but she's not there yet. I wanted to introduce her to you so you could perhaps be inspired by her story. So, welcome, Michele.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I'm so happy that you're here. So, Michele, tell us a little bit about how you got started on the writing journey because you didn't start out as a young person wanting to be a writer, or is that not true?
That's true.
Oh, it is true.
Mhm. Well, my name is Michele. I live in Orange County, California. I have two teenage daughters, and I've been married for almost 21 years. And I've kind of gone through a bunch of jobs in my life. Never once was writing on my list of things to do, but I got sober a little over 3 years ago, and I listened probably to just hundreds of hours of podcasts and read a lot of addiction and sobriety memoirs. And it was just one day I was on a walk and I was listening to this girl. Her name was the Sober Senorita. And she was kind of talking about the same thing. She had never wanted to be a writer and she just became so successful. I read a lot about her. And she was just, a normal girl like me, just with a story to share. And I just thought, well, maybe I could do that. And I've always loved English. That was my favorite subject in school when I was growing up. And then I just started, like on my 1 year anniversary of being sober, I just started writing and I was writing every day since then. And just all those emotions and memories and feelings that I, kept to myself for so many years, it just felt so good to get them out on paper.
Is so when you started in, what was it, 2022?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you started writing on Medium in 2022, did you just jump right into your sobriety story or did you test the water?
My my first story was about, it was my 1 year sobriety post. And I, talked about how I got sober. And probably my first maybe 30 stories were only about that.
30
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah.
Wow. When I write about mine, I'm like, didn't I just already say I felt like, but there's always another angle to talk about. So I can totally relate to the 30 stories, but sometimes when I'm writing about mine, I'm like, did I already say this to people? I feel like I'm repeating myself. I'm like, but anyway, those articles seem to do pretty well. And I think there's an interest in on Medium for one platform, but in general, I think people are interested and open to talking about sobriety. Do you find the same thing?
I do. And I think, right when I started, I had one story that kind of took off. And you know how that feels when, you get a lot of responses and it feels good. And I just thought there's so many people out there struggling, or, those gray area drinkers that think they have to be an alcoholic to quit drinking. Just a lot of people resonate with that because alcohol is so prevalent in our society.
Really, really is. So, was there one thing that happened that made you decide to quit?
Yeah, it wasn't the most momentous thing in my journey of, 20 plus years drinking. There was a lot worse times that for some reason didn't make me quit. But I kind of was going on a binge. I liked to do that. It was the holidays and it was one party after the next. And then it just kind of snowballed into me drinking all day for 3 days straight and locking myself in my downstairs bedroom that I'm actually in right now. And I woke up the last day of drinking and I looked at myself in the mirror and I saw my mother staring back at me. And I just was so disgusted with myself and thinking, why am I doing this? Like, there's so much more to life than sitting alone and drinking.
So I've read a lot of your stories, and I don't know that the listener knows that seeing your mother in the mirror was not a good thing. So can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was a hard childhood. She, mentally and physically abused me for the first 11 years of my life. And she is also bipolar, and I'm bipolar too. And she's an alcoholic and a drug addict, and she still is at 70 years old. And she just scared the crap out of me growing up, and I didn't want to be like that. And she actually came into my room one day when I was 11, and she told me I needed to get the hell out of her house and that my dad was going to pick me up because they were divorced. And I moved in with him. She felt bad about it and tried to get me to come back, and I didn't. And we haven't had a relationship since then.
So,
And there really wasn't ever a relationship. Like, she's just never been a mother to me.
so the day that she kicked you out, had you irritated her in some way, or was it so like unexpected?
No, I irritated her. She took my backpack for some reason, which is like something she didn't normally do. And I had a note in there that I had, we used to pass notes back and forth in class to our friends. And
Yes.
my best friend knew everything about, our relationship. And I had written something like, oh, I wonder what my mom's going to be like when I get home, if she's had her drugs or not. And then I left that in my backpack, and she read that, and she just, yeah, that was
That
it.
was it. That was it.
Yeah.
So, how you said you were 11 at the time, right?
Mhm.
And when was it that you actually started experimenting with alcohol?
Well, after I moved out with my dad, I was, one of those people like, I'm never going to drink. I'm never going to do drugs because I never want to be like her. But I was so socially awkward and anxious and just shy that when I was hanging out with a different crowd, they had alcohol, and I just thought, oh, it's fine. Like, I'll just do it. Like, everybody does it. I still won't be like her. But that first moment that I took that drink and felt like everything just kind of like, as I just loved it. And, it wasn't crazy from the start, but, it led to then I smoked pot, and then I was doing drugs in high school. And then, that snowballed. But then I always thought drugs were my problem, and I stopped doing the drugs. But then, alcohol, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, anything's going to be a problem for me, any substance.
Right.
So,
I remember reading that you say you have like an addictive a personality. Is that what you said? Or
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So it was
yeah.
easy for you to kind of get hooked into something. And
Anything that makes you feel good.
yeah.
Even like, at the beginning of my writing, I was like addicted to that, where I kind of had to like take breaks because, it's not always good. There's like a lot of low points too.
Well, you mean like the dopamine hits when you get
Yes.
a lot of claps and things
Yeah.
like that and comments. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So when did you find out about your own mental health diagnosis?
Well, this one's kind of a hard one. My daughter, we kind of found out she was self-harming,
Mm.
and like my world came crashing down, and I just began to think it was all my fault because any little thing would kind of set me off. Like, I would come home from work and there would be dishes in the sink, and I would freak out and be yelling and slamming doors. And, after a while, it just like didn't seem normal to me. Like, and then it all started making sense. I started putting it together, and like how my mom acted, erratic, and she was never medicated because she liked the highs. Where for me, it wasn't like as drastic, the highs and the lows, but it was still, ruining my relationships with my family. And so I had tried a bunch of antidepressants before, but they don't work with someone that's bipolar. It's a different kind of medication. So I found a psychiatrist that did a saliva test, and I told him all my symptoms, and he said, you're probably bipolar too, but we're gonna, send this saliva test in and see. I guess it matches with like what medications would work for you. And so it came back that it would work, the mood stabilizer, and I've been on that ever since. And that was probably like 2016, I think. And it really like night and day. Just, I
Really?
would come home after that, there was a mess and I just kind of let it go. And it was amazing. So just that one little pill kind of saved my relationships and my sanity.
Your sanity. I don't know the answer to this question, but maybe you do. Does mental health, do mental illnesses run in families? Like, were you predisposed because of your mother, or do you know that answer? I'm just
I
curious.
often wonder if it's like genetic or if it's like a product of your environment too, or maybe it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, yeah, no, because I have my mother also was undiagnosed throughout her life, and not until she had dementia did a doctor finally say, "Hey, what's up with your mom?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know." You mean besides the dementia? And he's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Wow, like somebody else saw it, and it wasn't just me," and you know, of course, there's the stigma that
Mhm.
is attached to it, and so who knows? Maybe
Which is
that's the topic
silly
for
to me
another
because
show.
it's not like, it's not like we can help it.
No, we can't help it. We can't help it.
Yeah.
Now, when you did go on your medications, you were still drinking then, right?
I was. Well, I kind of would go on and off. At that moment, I wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it was a lot of starts and stops for me because I would do something ridiculous and then I would stop and then I would forget how ridiculous I was and think I wasn't that bad and would start again because all my friends are drinking and I don't want to feel like the weird one that doesn't drink. And I just never could accept like that I might have to stop drinking forever. So I never really wanted to. And it was always like when I did stop, I was just pissed that I couldn't drink
Mm-hmm.
until this time. And I just feel so relieved that I don't have to drink.
Yeah, it is a big relief.
Yeah.
Do you um, share your story now? If you want to read about Michelle, she puts it all out there. Like, I'm not going to tell you everything because I want you to go on Medium and find her stories, but she shares and she's very vulnerable and honest, and I think that's why you're such a beloved creator because you really like show yourself warts and all, and there's a fair amount of reflection about why was I this way, and do you feel like you have compassion for yourself as you were when you were going through all that, or are you hard on yourself?
No, I do. Now I do. I mean, I just feel like with what happened to me as a child and what I went through, it's kind of like, you know, not that it should have happened, but it's understandable why I behaved that way. There's a lot of things that I regret, even though we're not supposed to have regrets. Well, there are some things that I do regret.
Mhm.
Um, but I just kind of have gotten to the place where I've had to let it go because just harping on things and then writing about it kind of lets me release it and let it go. Because how am I going to, grow if I just keep holding on to all of these things that I did?
And I think writing, it is a way of making sense of things because when you write an article, it has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and I feel like writing does help with that kind of processing of the past. But I did want to ask you, so how much of your journey, like we all did stuff when we were young and we don't necessarily tell our kids, but you've already
Yeah.
put it all out there, and I wonder, like, do they read your stuff? Do you just tell them what it was like, or how is that relationship?
No one, yeah, nobody in my house reads my stuff. I mean, my husband has, but he doesn't have time for it. He knows everything anyways.
Yeah.
The girls, I've been telling them more stuff because they're older now. They're, 17 and 19. Um, they don't know everything, which like there's only one person in my life that knows like almost everything. So yeah.
Mhm.
They
Do you
know a lot though. I've just recently told them that I did drugs in high school because I never told them that before. And yeah, they just accept me now. They're just so happy that like I'm sober and I'm like emotionally there for them.
Mhm.
And I'll know if they start doing drugs. So that's a good thing about it, I guess.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever regret anything that you've written that you put out there? And do you ever like send it like, oh my God, I can't believe I just sent that out there?
Oh, yeah. There was actually, I did a series of stories. I think there was 3 stories because it was a lot of information about when I started using, we called it speed, but methamphetamine when I was a senior in high school. And then I, continued that into college for a little bit. And I wrote like everything about it. And then I kind of, okay, um, this is when I actually backtrack a little bit. I have, 2 emails. I have my medium email and then I have my other email. And I accidentally sent an email to my daughter's dance studio under the sober vegan yogi email, and I like freaked out. I'm like, oh my God, I got to take down that crazy story before anybody reads it. So yeah, I did that. I mean, I still left up all my other stories, but that one was just kind of gnarly. So I put it down.
So I think telling the story is so important, not only for the writer themselves, but also because it helps other people. And what what is the motivation for you to write? Like, where do you get the courage? How are you not afraid to tell us this stuff? Like, what's behind you writing this?
I think it just started to stem from because I probably listened to, I don't even know, 1,000 stories of people and how they just laid it all out there. And I think once you're really done, then it makes it easier. Because I'm not going to put all this stuff out there and then go back to drinking after people read
It's accountability, right? Yeah,
it. Sorry.
definitely. No worries. No worries. So you mentioned in one of your stories that I believe it was at age 32 that you got cancer as a young mother, and your youngest
Mhm.
was 5.
Yeah.
How did that, how did you realize or that you were not, that you had cancer? What happened?
I think I was almost sober for a year that time. It was my first try at sobriety. I had gone to rehab and I was home being so healthy. I was juicing all the time and working out. I started doing yoga and feeling really good. And my mom, my stepmom, I call her my mom. Um, her best friend just got diagnosed with breast cancer and she had to go through chemo and everything. And she was telling me all the time that I needed to, do a self breast exam. And I felt something on one side. And so I went in, they did, the check, they did a biopsy. It was just a cyst, but they wanted me to keep coming in every 6 months. And so I went back again 6 months and I had calcifications on one side, the other side. And so they wanted to do another biopsy for that. And they're like, oh, it's probably nothing. Like everybody has these, it's gonna be fine. And it was, stage 1. So I thankfully that happened because I caught it early enough that I just got a double mastectomy and I didn't have to do anything else. And I just,
Did you
kept
do
going
like
in for,
genetic testing too? Like, were you,
no, I didn't have
no,
that.
it wasn't the cancer that runs in families, but it was,
No, it's like, I'm pretty sure it was alcohol induced
okay.
cancer.
So
Yeah.
I, 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 I mean, I don't want to say agree with you, but I don't know. But with all the information that is available now, and not certainly not back when your daughter was 5, I don't think we had that information. But now there are um, studies that show that that alcohol is a contributing factor to many types of cancer. One of
Mhm.
which is breast cancer, one of which is colon cancer, stomach cancer, esophageal cancer. So um, alcohol is a contributor, and it's a
Mhm.
fact. So it's interesting. Um, well, at the time, obviously, you didn't think that, but now looking back, you do think that, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Knowing this information, do you ever try to influence other people not to drink, or do you just like tell your story and then, even with
Yeah.
your children, tell your story and let them decide?
Yeah, I don't. At first, when I was first sober, I tried to, tell all this to my friends, and it just kind of gets annoying to people. So
And
I
it's get
just kind
annoying.
of took a step back from that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, you're not going to get sober unless you want it. No one else is going to make you get sober. I know that by now.
Right, right.
So,
It has to be
people
fair.
have
It
to
has to
find
be
out
your
for
own
themselves.
idea because it's a
Yeah,
really hard thing to do. And I
right.
consider myself a gray area drinker. I didn't drink quantity, but I was in a habit and I had the hardest time not,
Hmm.
stopping because it was a comfort to me. There was something there that I wanted. I mean, it
Yep.
relaxes you, there's just a number of factors. But I wanted to ask you, what else are you writing on Medium besides your sobriety journey?
Well, now I've kind of branched out. I don't write about it as much anymore, but I still want to because I don't want to forget. Like I just wrote a story, it's had been a while about, a drunken dream that I had that was felt really real and I woke up freaking out about it. And I think good things like that are good for me to remember because I don't ever want to think that I wasn't that bad again because I was that bad.
And
But
do you still feel the pull? Like, do you see like your friends drinking or your husband drinking and say, "Oh, that would taste
no,
so good." You don't ever feel it. I do.
never.
I'm
You
like,
do.
"Oh, that looks good."
Well,
You
because
don't
you
have.
weren't like me. I was like, like death was knocking at my door at the
Okay.
end.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty gross.
Okay.
But I write about, I love to travel. I'm taking up photography. I write about my daughters. And just kind of like, if something comes to mind, I write about it now.
So and you also write on Substack, correct? Is there any
Which
other
I've been
place?
slacking very bad on Substack.
Substack.
I need to get back to it. I'm a total slacker. There's just not enough time in the day to do everything I want to do.
Do you write every day?
No, like a few times a week. I used to write every day, but there's just, with the editing and all that stuff and, nominating and everything.
Well,
So,
yeah, you have other duties too. But
yeah.
if you were to um, encourage someone who is thinking about writing, maybe even writing their sobriety story or another type of story, was how did you get started? How would you encourage someone to take that first step?
I just jumped right in. And I guess I think it's easier because I'm not a perfectionist. So I just kind of write it and I, read it a few times and then I publish and I just try not to think about what other people are going to think about me because it feels good to get it out. So I guess I would just tell someone that if they really want to, they should just go for it.
Did you start on Medium? Is that where you started writing?
Yep. Hmm.
You
My
just
husband told me about it because
uh,
I had that idea from that girl that I listened to her
right.
podcast and I think she had a WordPress, but she's like an author, she has books out now and stuff. But then he's like, well, why don't you write on Medium? You can already have an audience built in. And I had no idea what Medium was, but I signed up that day on my 1 year and yeah, it's been a great ride since then.
And you had no, I just want to reiterate, you had no training in writing online. You just basically read other people and said, "Hey, I can do that." And then you just did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I have no training. I dropped out of college. I'm not, I'm not your typical,
Yeah. Yeah.
English master's degree writer.
Well, do you feel that so you have a lot of people that follow you, and do you think it is because of your sobriety stories, or do you think it's the appeal, is some other appeal about you?
Um, Gosh, sometimes I don't even know. Maybe it's just because I lay it all out there
Mhm.
and I'm
You really
authentic.
do. You really
You
do.
know?
And I think that's what makes you so lovable because you're just like, I remember the one article and you're like, "I'm okay being in my hotel room alone. So everybody just leave me alone." I'm like, "Yeah, me too." But
It's
it's kind
much better
of,
than hanging out with a bunch of bitchy dance moms.
yeah, yeah. Boy, that's a whole thing, isn't it?
That's a
Dance
whole
Mom
thing.
thing. Like there's a show on TV, right, called Dance
Yeah.
Moms. Do you like think
Yeah.
that's, I don't ever watch it, so but do you feel like that's a true
No,
representation
I mean that's a little out of control.
overboard?
It's not really like that. It's just more like clicky and, I feel like I'm left out because they all party and I
Hmm.
don't anymore.
Yeah.
So that's why I said that. Like, if I don't get invited, I'm totally fine, with my laptop, watching my show and eating by myself.
So It's such a contrast from Party Girl that you wrote about and to be now, I'm okay by myself. I like my hotel. So it's a shocker really to read who you used to be and now being okay by yourself.
Yeah,
And
it's a shocker to me too. It was,
so you think
it
that
was
you were
crazy.
always kind of an introvert, but
Yes,
alcohol like interfered with, and drugs, whatever, kind of interfered with your, I don't know, development or whatever.
for sure. I was so, because I think I was shushed and silenced as a kid. That made me really, especially in middle school, it was so difficult. It was painful to be that shy. And so, when I first drank, it was like, oh my gosh, I don't have to feel that. Like, ooh. So I think, when I quit drinking, because they say like you don't grow up from that moment, you start heavily drinking, your growth is stunted. And I think I had to go back to being a teenager and start all over again. But there's something now, like I was really nervous in the beginning, like the first year of my sobriety, going out to, functions and social events because I wasn't drinking and I just like felt so uncomfortable. But it's gotten like so much easier now, and I'm so thankful for that because it really makes a difference in, your mental health.
Did people question you because when you stopped being party girl, like were people alarmed?
A lot of people didn't know
Oh,
because, like you only let so many people see that real side of you. Um, but the people that I was partying with are my really good friends and they know everything and they're fine with it. Like I
mm,
just went camping with a few of them this weekend, and it's kind of funny because now in our friend group, like every couple has an alcoholic in it. And
mm.
so then some of them are sober and some of them aren't. So it's interesting.
I mean, is it acknowledged or you're just saying this as your viewpoint?
Well, the ones that aren't sober yet is not acknowledged. I'm just
Mm,
from
I
my
see.
observations. But the my one friend that was there sober, we talk about it in front of everybody. So it's
Amen.
nice to not be like in hiding. Like every time I would get sober before, I was like, I would never tell anyone. And it was just, I would just go into hiding like a cocoon,
I see. I
not
see.
do anything. Yeah.
So I want to ask you how your creativity has changed now that you're sober. Do you feel like you are accessing things that you didn't know you had, or
Yeah. I used to hate being alone when I was drinking. And if I was alone, it was always a scary time because I would just drink by myself. And so that kind of scared me. But now I love being alone because I can, tinker. Like I, got a new camera and I take photos with it and then I edit them online and um, with the writing makes me feel creative. I just feel like now I don't have enough time to do everything that I want. When before I was like, time was my enemy, probably because I wasn't doing anything with my life.
what do you mean time was your enemy?
Because if I had idle time, then I would just end up drinking.
Oh, so you would fill it with that.
Hmm.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
So you do write about um, sobriety. You do write about your transition to embracing your introversion.
Yeah.
I saw a great article you wrote recently where you put some photos up. So are you taking any classes or are you just like learning on your own to be a
I've
photographer?
just been watching YouTubes. I really want to take a class. I just haven't found anything that I want to do yet. But I've been looking into that, although you can kind of teach yourself a lot from YouTube, which is
You
pretty cool these
can.
days. Yeah.
And your other love, if I would categorize you on medium as to what you write besides sobriety and self development and photography, would be travel. Travel. You seem to
Yes.
really make sure that you're going places. So, um, what was your favorite trip that you've been on?
Oh, well, I love, you know what I love? I always love if I have something to look forward to. And I love the planning part of travel. I just feel like any place I go, I can find something good about it. My favorite though, I think Canada.
Canada,
So beautiful. Yeah.
just because of the natural habitat in Canada.
Yeah. I just like because I live in a very crowded city. Like there's a few palm trees, but there's not a lot of nature unless you're at the beach. So I just love getting out of the city and even just going to the desert this weekend, which is kind of boring. It was just kind of nice just to get away from everyone, all the cars and everything.
Mhm.
So I love that. And I love yoga. So that's my other
Oh,
love.
right. Oh, that's right.
Just like you.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I forgot because I
There
thought you
this
were a
morning.
teacher. I thought you were a teacher.
One of
I'm
my,
like, oh, this
no,
girl's
I'm not a
a teacher.
teacher.
That's
It
why I
just,
followed you. I'm like, oh, she's
yeah.
a teacher. I want to learn from her.
Oh, I
So
know. And then
talk
I'm
to us
like,
about
wait, should I
yoga.
not call myself a yogi if I'm not a teacher?
Well, yeah, you can. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't even call myself a yogi. I
Oh,
say I'm a practitioner
okay.
because it's just I'm learning, and they actually say the yogis were like sages, and that's why I avoid that title for myself
Oh,
because it was
okay.
like these old men you can imagine, with
Oh,
the beards, and then they
yeah.
could like levitate, and they had all these special powers, and I'm like, oh, so that's what I think a yogi is, but I know it's a very common term. So tell us about yoga. When did you start? Were you drinking when you started yoga?
No, it was that first stint of sobriety, and I had a friend, and she kept asking me to go to hot yoga with her, and I was too scared. I didn't think I could handle the heat. And she finally convinced me to go. I was going to meet her there. I think it was like a 6 o'clock p.m. class. And I psyched myself up, got all my stuff ready, got there, and she never showed up. And I was waiting and freaking out. She didn't come. I almost left, but I'm like, I'll just do it. It'll be fine. And at the end in Shavasana, I was like, this is amazing. I got in the car and I was just like flying home and had the best feeling. And that was it. And I've gone to yoga almost every day unless I was on a complete binge or on vacation since 2010.
It's
So
2010.
it's kind of held me, you know, grounded a little bit, even through the drinking. But I have friends at yoga that they don't even know about my struggles, and I've been doing yoga with them for like whatever, 14 years,
Hmm.
which I haven't come clean. They know I'm not drinking now, but I don't talk about why,
Well, they
which
can
is
read all
silly because
about
I
it.
just write about it. And I'm just waiting for someone to find out about it and
Oh,
ask
so
me.
none of your people have read your, I want to say confessions, but your journey on Medium.
Yeah, just a few of my really close friends who already knew
Hmm.
anyway. Yeah.
So, how do you feel like yoga has impacted you, your sobriety, or impacted you in any way, in a positive way? Like, how's that worked itself in that you were just like obsessed with it?
Because when I don't go, I don't feel good. Like
Hmm.
I just feel amazing after. And I enjoy, the mantras that they say and the wisdom. Like I have favorite teachers and just the physical aspect of it just makes me feel good. I like to be healthy. I try to eat really clean and I just love the yoga. Yeah.
And would you consider becoming a teacher?
No. I have a hard time, flowing with my words. And I think like we have some newly trained teachers at the studio, and a lot of them are, tripping over their words and they're getting embarrassed. And I thought that would be me. Like I'm just good doing practicing myself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that is the struggle for all. When I took the teacher training, I just wanted to know more about yoga, but
Yeah.
then they actually make you teach, and I was like
Mm.
astonished. I'm like, "Ah, I have to teach, and I had the same issue. Like the words don't come out, and
Yeah.
but I mean, I think that is a something that you do acquire, sort of like when you write, you don't write well at first, but then as you practice or whatever. But anyway, I think that you have such a unique point of view. And one of the reasons that I actually went sober is because yoga teaches that you don't need anything external. You have everything within you. And if you feel like I have to have this, then you have to say, oh, why do I have to have it? It's sort of like an inquiry process as you get to know more about yoga philosophy and stuff like that. So that
Mhm.
sort of like got me on the path. So anyway, and actually, I told you this, or you've read some of my stories where I was a teacher to people in sobriety, but I was not a sober teacher.
Yeah, I love your story. That
Yeah,
last story was great.
yeah. So, life is funny that way, I think.
Yeah.
So, what is the most important thing you've learned in the last 10 years?
I guess just to accept myself the way that I am, and I'm trying. It's like it'll never really go away, but just trying not to worry so much about what people think. Um, in different times that I've gotten sober, I've kind of like traded my alcohol use for like shopping so I can like always look good to other people and going into debt and buying too much stuff, making sure my house always looks perfect. And, this time I just don't do that anymore. Like I've just kind of become comfortable with who I am. I don't feel like I need to impress anyone. I just kind of don't really wear makeup every day. I just wear my yoga leggings and I'm fine with it.
So, you
So,
sort of are cultivating an awareness that who you are is perfectly fine.
yeah,
You don't have to put on, you know, the expense of this or my house. That's a big thing too with the houses looking a certain way. I think HGTV kind of
I
ruined
know.
a lot of people's lives. Like my house never looked that way. And now I feel like if I have people come over, like what is my house supposed to look like? Like
I
I
know.
think there's just, and I really like your room that I see in your
Oh,
video. It
yeah.
looks very nice. It's very pottery barn. I'm loving it. But yeah, I mean, I agree. Like I fight against those things personally too. I'm like, it's okay if there's a crumb on the floor. Like,
Like
why?
no one else is gonna see it. No one cares
No one
except
cares. They came to see me. They came to see
yeah.
my husband. They came to be with me. You have to reframe things. Okay, so would you ever, or are you considering writing a book?
I would. I actually wrote kind of a mini memoir. I was approached by someone on Medium. This was probably like a year ago, and she was doing a compilation of different, you probably remember this, different writers from different points of view. It was, someone struggling with addiction, someone maybe was a mother that had their son in addiction, someone lost a family member. And so I wrote, I think it was 20 or 30 pages of my life story. And then the editor was going through that. And, I include all these people in my story because it plays a part like of who I was hanging out with and who I was partying with. And she wanted me to, edit that all out. But then I just thought that's not my story if I edit it all out. Because if they find out, then they'll want to sue me and I would have to go get permission from everyone. And so I just pulled it and I haven't worked on it since.
Well, you raise an interesting question because, I mean, you're right. There's people in your lives. You don't have to say their names, right? That's like a
Right. Well, I
silent.
didn't say it, but it was like my sister-in-law or my best friend and change her name. But then if they read it, like they would know that that's them. So I would have to have them sign off on everything. And then I would have to go back to all these people in my past and ask them that. And it
Is
just
that
seemed like it
right?
was just a lot.
So for a memoir, is that what we have to do? We have to go get permission from everybody that is in our story?
If you don't want to have the potential of being sued.
Wow.
So,
I see so
yeah.
many memoirs out there talking all kinds of stuff about
Yeah.
people's lives, and I'm like,
It's not always going to happen, I guess, but that was, there was potential for that. I didn't even think about that when I was writing it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Huh.
So maybe, I mean, I could expand on that. I was even thinking maybe I'll just put it out on, what is it, Gumroad or something like that.
Oh,
But
you can put books out on Gumroad?
you can, or you can do like Amazon. Yeah, like self-publish. Yeah,
What is something that you're the most proud of that you've done so far?
I guess the writing, I am proud of it. That I've always started and stopped so many things in my life, and I hope this sticks around because I would start something and think I'm not good at this, and I would quit. And then, that just happened a lot. Like I was going to be a real estate agent, I was going to be a nurse, I was going to be um, whatever, I was going to be different things, and I just never followed through. And so I'm proud of myself for putting myself out there, and I'm just hoping that it helps someone else, like it helped me when I read other people's stories.
I have to say, I'm really proud of mine too, because it was friggin' hard. It was a
Yeah.
very hard thing to do. And, kudos to you, Michelle, because that was really a big part of your life. So, Pebble in Your Shoe, the Pebble in Your Shoe podcast is we mostly talk to people in their third chapter. And I wonder if you could, as someone who's reinvented herself multiple times, could give some advice to someone who's now got an empty nest, doesn't have a job anymore, and has quite a few years ahead of them, being productive or doing work that inspires them. Do you have any advice on how to figure that out, or any advice at all to someone my age?
Giving someone older my advice. I just think you have to let go of expectations and fear, um, and just put yourself out there and just follow through. Because, there's times when I don't want to do anything. I just want to lounge around, and then you have to give yourself those days too. Um, and I guess if you're, in your third chapter and you're not worried about money anymore, if you have a nest egg, then you should just do what you love, do what makes you happy.
What do you
Like I
say
would
to
love if
someone
I could just take pictures all the time and, write and not do anything else.
what do you say to people who are afraid to put it all out there, like in the writing journey that you have taken? Did
Um,
anything bad happen after you wrote those stories?
there was one story that I wrote about my best friend because I felt like she wasn't being sensitive to my sobriety, and she was kind of just leaving me in the dust and hanging out with all of her other friends. And I wrote a story. I didn't use her name, but she kind of would post all these things online, and it would make me really jealous and sad. And I wrote a story about, social media and what it does to your mental health. And then I referenced all these things. And she wasn't really ever reading. She knew I wrote on Medium, but I stopped sending her. We would use Snapchat every day and send a snap back and forth, a picture. And I stopped doing that. So I think she went fishing for what was going on instead of asking me, which I should have told her instead of just writing about it and posting it. And so we got in a huge fight over that. But thankfully, we mended everything and we're back to being friends. But now I've learned, like, I shouldn't do that. I should actually go talk to the person instead of just writing about it and, letting her read it. So,
So that's
those
a
are,
good piece of advice. Like, don't air out your issues to the world. Work on it with the person that's involved, right?
yeah. Or I
Yeah,
should have just written all my feelings out and kept it to myself and not published it.
right, right.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's one thing about writing about my mom who I don't talk to anymore. And even if she did find my stories, like I wouldn't care. Like
Yeah.
she deserves to read it if she ever reads it.
What's that
Um,
saying? If you didn't want me to write about you, you should have treated me better, or something.
yeah.
Have you heard
Yeah,
that?
there you go.
And that is your truth. There's nothing stopping someone you write about from writing their own truth too. Like if you
Right.
don't like what I write, go write your own thing.
Yeah.
So, well, this has been so fun. Michelle, tell us where we can find you. Is it only on Medium, or where would you want us to follow you?
Yeah, just on Medium. I used to have Instagram, but it was just too much work to keep it up, and interacting with all these people that I didn't know, it just kind of got too much. So I deleted that. Plus it's just, I don't really like Instagram either. I like Medium where everybody's real, and well, most of the people are real. The ones that I choose to interact with are real, raw writers that share their, struggles.
Yeah.
But yeah, just on Medium. It's just michellemaize.medium.com, I think.
I will put it in the notes. I don't know what it is.
And then I have my Substack. It's michellemaize.substack.com,
Yes.
which I'm going to get better at, because I was
Get
posting an
that.
article a week and I don't think I've posted one this month.
Okay. Okay. Well, you're showing us the real unedited version, and I think that everyone appreciates that it's a struggle. It's a struggle to write, and it's a struggle to put your stories out there, but it's the benefits are beautiful. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Michelle. It's been a
Thank
pleasure
you so
talking
much.
with you. And everyone, go read her stories. You're going to love them. Thanks,
Oh, thanks so
Michelle.
much.